This morning we are really very happy to be presenting to you the Yale-NUS College's leadership team. And as you would have read, we have an outstanding humanities scholar and academic leader, a leading physicist who is also accomplished in teaching and research, and a top administrator with wide-ranging expertise and experience, both in Singapore and overseas. This is a team that encompasses a remarkable set of qualities, a deep understanding of the liberal arts, education, and a strong passion for the vision and mission of the Yale-NUS College. As you all know, the Yale-NUS College will provide for high potential students a valuable educational option that's not available in Singapore and Asia today. And this option is one which will have a primary focus on breadth with rigor as well as critical thinking. We hope the college's graduates will be well-rounded, but one distinctive aspect which I like to perhaps highlight is we think that this college will nurture graduates with what I'll call a zoom-out, zoom-in ability. The ability to zoom out, to see the big picture, and the connections between issues, between different disciplines, and the ability to zoom in deeply into specific areas. So this zoom out, zoom in ability, we all know is vital for dealing effectively with the complex issues that characterize much of work and life today. President Levin, my colleagues and I share a common aspiration for the Yale-NUS College, which is to develop a distinctive educational approach and pedagogy, and also to serve as a new model for liberal arts education in the 21st century. To achieve this, we've carried out a global search, an extensive global search for the college's president, and we've also worked hard to put together the right leadership team, which will be able to develop the vision for the college and also to enable that vision and promise to be realized. We were looking for a college president and leadership team with a powerful passion for the college, a deep commitment to the central ideas and motivation that led to its creation, and of course the qualities and skills essential for its successful implementation. So right now, the college's governing board, President Levin and myself, we are truly delighted that we have such a president and leadership team in place. So perhaps now I'll just invite President Rick Levin to share some of his thoughts and to introduce the Yale-NUS College president.
Thank you, Choy, and thank you all for coming. This is an important milestone in the life of an extraordinary institution. Since discussions began in January 2009, those of us involved in the creation of Yale-NUS College have sustained a high level of enthusiasm, fueled by our belief in and our commitment to an ambitious mission to develop for Singapore and for Asia an undergraduate curriculum that is rich in multidisciplinary breadth, a pedagogy that encourages independent critical thinking, and a residential and extracurricular life that supports the development of students who will become leaders with a global perspective. Many faculty members at Yale and at NUS have invested deeply in this project, sketching the outlines of a novel and exciting curriculum, and this past year working to recruit an initial cohort of 30 faculty from a candidate pool of over 2,000 applicants. We are thrilled by the quality and commitment of these newly recruited faculty, and we look forward to introducing them to the public very soon. Meanwhile, President Tan and I, along with our provosts and our board chair, Kay Kwok, have been conducting a global search for a president for the new college. We screened through the credentials of dozens of outstanding candidates and interviewed a number who were sitting presidents of liberal arts colleges, as well as others who were senior administrators at leading research universities. In the end, however, we recognized the value of naming a leader who had already had a shaping role in this ambitious project, one who had demonstrated During the course of his 2-year involvement with Yale-NUS, his superior analytic, organizational, and interpersonal skills, as well as remarkable thought leadership in developing the curriculum and recruiting faculty. Pericles Lewis is passionately and deeply committed to the success of Yale-NUS College. He is a brilliant scholar of modernist literature with 3 important books and 2 prestigious edited volumes to his credit. He has chaired major committees at Yale and overseen both graduate and undergraduate programs in literature. But what is most important is that he is a natural academic leader. He's a brilliant scholar. He's a natural academic leader. Our chair, Kay Kwok, and other members of the governing board of the college, President Tan, and all of us who've been privileged to work with Professor Lewis during these past 2 years have admired his extraordinary contributions to our thinking about the college and his unparalleled energy for finding the best possible faculty candidates and encouraging them to come to Singapore. In my 19-year career as president of Yale, I've mentored several colleagues who have gone on to lead major universities, including Cambridge, Oxford, MIT, Duke, and Carnegie Mellon. Pericles Lewis stands out, even in this distinguished group, for his ability to cut to the heart of the matter, to articulate solutions clearly and simply, and to inspire others. We're greatly fortunate to have a leader of his caliber for Yale-NUS College. Professor Lewis and his wife Sheila, along with their 2 children, look forward to moving to Singapore and plunging into the life of the college. It is my honor and great pleasure to introduce to you my colleague Pericles Lewis, the president of Yale-NUS College.
Thank you very much. President Tan, President Levin, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, future Yale-NUS students, welcome. I'm deeply honored to accept the position of President of Yale-NUS College. It is an extraordinary privilege for me to have the opportunity to lead this new college as we reimagine undergraduate education for the 21st century. I'm indebted to the governing board for the confidence that they've placed in me, and I'm grateful for the visionary leadership displayed by President Tan Chor Chuan and President Rick Levin in bringing together this partnership of 2 of the world's great universities, and also for the efforts of so many others, both in Singapore and at Yale, to bring us to this point. In particular, the strong support and commitment of the government of Singapore has been essential. Prime Minister Lee noted that the distinctiveness of a liberal arts education and its goal of developing students who can think broadly and rigorously and make connections across domains of knowledge will be valuable for Singapore in a more complex and interconnected world. And I would like to speak to you today about my vision of what a 21st century liberal arts and sciences education will offer, including our distinctive pedagogy, our global curriculum and programs, and our efforts to create a residential community that links living and learning. First of all, what is liberal arts education? The word liberal refers historically to what was most important for an educated person, free of other responsibilities, to study. So the liberal arts are closely aligned with freedom, the freedom to pursue intellectual questions wherever scholarship takes us, and the freedom to debate issues of current concern. The goals of a liberal arts education have long been to teach students to analyze carefully, to communicate effectively, and to make wise choices. The word arts refers historically not just to the visual and fine arts, although that's included, but to the whole span of human activity, from music to physics and beyond. Yale-NUS College will offer a liberal arts and sciences education that is updated for the 21st century. That means giving students the breadth of knowledge that allows them to see problems from a variety of angles and approaches, to ask important questions in any field of endeavor, as well as the rigorous training in a single discipline that allows them to understand how to plunge into a particular problem when appropriate. I expect our students to master a body of knowledge and techniques, but I also want them to be able to approach and solve problems from many different angles, and I believe that these are characteristics that will serve them well in their future lives too, because rather than train for one specific job, they're training to have a set of skills that will allow them to be adaptable in many different situations later in life. So take, for example, the study of the environment, and specifically the relationship between shrimp farms and mangrove forests in Southeast Asia. Over the last couple of decades, a number of mangrove forests have been cleared in order to make room for commercial shrimp farms. And this obviously has economic benefits to employees, to consumers who want to eat seafood because it's healthful to eat seafood, but it also has environmental costs. The mangrove forests are a place of great biodiversity. They play a role in controlling tsunamis and similar events. And so how do we approach an environmental problem like this? Clearly a knowledge of climatology, a knowledge of perhaps nutrition, of botany, these things are all relevant. And yet the relationship of the humans to their natural environment is also a question of social norms and a question of the human sense of a relationship to nature, which may be grounded in historical or religious traditions. And so to truly understand an important environmental problem like this one requires more than, one requires the scientific knowledge, there's no doubt, but one requires more than that, also an understanding of the social and humanistic aspects of environmental studies. So our environmental studies program at Yale-NUS will draw on scientific, social scientific, and humanistic knowledge to address this kind of challenging problem. This is just one example. Many different courses that we're offering are interdisciplinary in nature, and more broadly our common curriculum is intended to allow students to get not just specialized technical knowledge, but also to understand the connections among the various disciplines. Closely related to this aspect of liberal arts education is the distinctive pedagogy that we approach, which is one of active learning, in which the student is asked to debate and discuss issues in the classroom rather than merely passively receive information and reproduce it in tests or in other forms. And it's that active learning that is really at the heart of the kind of critical thinking that a liberal arts education enables students to have. So it's both the breadth but also the methods of investigation that are fostered by liberal arts and science education that we're trying to update for the 21st century. And to bring the span of human knowledge together and allow students to develop their capacities to the fullest. Now for me, this pedagogical requirement, desire, is closely related to a second point about Yale-NUS College, which is its development of a global curriculum, one that will draw on Asian, Western, and other perspectives. While the words liberal arts come from the Western tradition, the type of active learning that we encourage is familiar from Asia as well. So the Chinese philosopher Mencius wrote in the 4th century BC of the goals of education. He wrote, "A gentleman teaches in 5 ways. The first is by a transforming influence like that of timely rain. The second is by helping the student to realize his virtue to the full. The third is by helping him to develop his talent. The fourth is by answering his questions. And the fifth is by setting an example others not in contact with him can emulate. These 5 are the ways in which a gentleman teaches." And while we might talk about character rather than virtue, or skills and capacities rather than talent, I think essentially Mencius was 25 centuries ahead of his time in this quotation, except, of course, he refers only to gentlemen. We have sought out wonderful professors who are ladies as well as gentlemen, who will be joining our faculty and who are eager to encourage active learning in the context of a global curriculum for the young women and men who will be our students. So at Yale-NUS College, we will provide a cosmopolitan education in which students explore not only their own cultural background, but the contributions made by many cultures from around the world. Through its curriculum, its programs, its community, Yale-NUS College will contribute to a deeper understanding between Singapore and the United States, and more broadly between Asia and the West, in a century when such understanding is going to be critical to all forms of progress. Finally, living and learning. In my own undergraduate days, I lived in a rather impersonal dormitory at McGill University in a single room unconnected to any others along a big corridor. And I did make friends there, but it was a relatively impoverished idea of just sort of living there and then going to study. It wasn't until I got to Stanford as a graduate student and lived in Hammarskjöld International Student Cooperative that I encountered for the first time the intellectual, spiritual, and temporal benefits that obtain from being a member of a true community of living and learning. That's also where I met my wife, Sheila Hare, who's with us in the, in the Pearls. As a professor at Yale and a fellow of Calhoun College, one of Yale's 12 residential colleges, I've had the great pleasure of getting to know a student on his or her first day at Yale and staying with them through 4 years, conversations over lunch, taking my classes, advising them on what other classes to take, and indeed seeing what they do in the future, how they go on with their careers. The residential model that we're building at Yale-NUS College will enhance the educational experience of students. Indeed, we're creating an extraordinary environment where the lines between living and learning really blur, so that the conversations you have in class where you learn a specific curriculum and so on are supplemented by the more serendipitous encounters that might take place at the dining hall or on a field trip or when you go and do service in your community in Singapore or at a club meeting. We hope that the ideas and debates that are sparked by your Yale-NUS education will shape your lives for many years to come. And of course, we're very happy that you've decided to join Yale-NUS College. I've made the same decision. The great political philosopher John Stuart Mill wrote in 1848, "It is hardly possible to overstate the value of placing human beings in contact with persons dissimilar to themselves, and with modes of thought and action unlike those with which they are familiar. Such communication," Mill says, "has always been one of the primary sources of progress." And these words are equally true in our age. The best hope for the leadership of a rapidly changing world lies in the continued exchange of ideas and knowledge, which is at the heart of a liberal education. That is my vision, and that is what we will accomplish at Yale-NUS College. Thank you. Now, it's a great pleasure to me to announce the two executive vice presidents who will join me on the leadership team of Yale-NUS College. Choy Heng, seated to Rick's left, executive vice president for academic affairs, is a physicist who's done influential research on quantum computing and has served NUS as dean and vice provost. He's a graduate of the University of Chicago, both undergrad and PhD, and has, in addition to his expertise in physics, a wide-ranging knowledge of Western classical and jazz music. Choy Heng will be leading our academic programs. And already in the last few months since meeting him, I've come to rely on Choy Heng's understanding of the National University of Singapore and all of its complexity, his sense of how a liberal arts education is going to work in the Singaporean context. It's interesting that his son has followed in his footsteps to Chicago, where he majored in English and computer science, a nice combination that I'd like to see some of our students emulate here. And I think that Choy Heng is really the best suited person I could imagine to help us figure out how a liberal arts education will work in a Singaporean context. Doris Sohmen-Pao, seated to the right of President Tan, is Executive Vice President for Administration, an expert and skilled practitioner in the field of human capital development. Doris studied politics and environmental studies at Princeton before getting her MBA at Harvard. She somehow managed to avoid getting a degree at Yale. At Princeton, she received the award for outstanding leadership by an undergraduate and went on to serve on the board of trustees as a young alumna. And Doris is going to be leading our administrative efforts. Already in the first few months of her appointment, Doris started a little bit ahead of Choy Heng and me. She's brought great energy to the staff of 30 who've been working night and day to make this college a reality. Her understanding both of liberal arts and education in the United States and of Singapore, where she's lived for 12 years, is unparalleled. And she spoke very movingly to our first group of admitted undergraduates, some of you were there, about the role that liberal arts education played in her own life. So I'm delighted to have her acumen in business administrative matters at the service of the educational ideals that we all share. One of the lessons that we will underscore for our students is the importance of collaboration and teamwork to maximize the success of almost any venture. And Choy Heng, Doris, and I will be modeling the same sense of teamwork that we want our students to pursue. It's deeply satisfying that the Yale-NUS leadership team includes a professor from each of our partner universities, Yale and NUS, a humanist and a scientist, as well as someone who's had such extensive expertise in the world of business and academic administration. Before closing, I'd like to salute and thank Lily Kong, who in her role on the team that studied the liberal arts initiative over the last 5 years, and then as acting executive vice president for academic affairs at Yale-NUS, has done more than anyone else to bring this partnership so far, so fast. And Lily's been a good friend and mentor to me personally. Fortunately, Lily will continue to advise us in the years ahead as she returns to her senior leadership role at NUS, so we'll be able to draw on her expertise and understanding of the venture. I'm also very grateful to my friend and colleague Charles Balin, Professor of Astronomy at Yale, for his continued work as Dean of the Faculty. Charles led the development of the curriculum and the recruitment of faculty, and one of the great pleasures of the job for me is going to be continuing our work together. Yale-NUS College will, I believe, allow students to develop their full potential. Our students will challenge conventional wisdom and contribute to progress here in Singapore and throughout the world. I'm very glad that you've decided to join us, and I'm humbled indeed to make my contribution to this great adventure that we're headed on together.